Determine the left-sided limit and the right-sided limit and the two-sided limit as x goes to -1 of the absolute value of x plus 1 over x plus 1. Each of these limits involves the limit as x approaches -1 of the absolute value of x plus 1 over x plus 1. The first thing to do is try plugging a -1 in for each of the x's. That will give us the absolute value of -1 plus 1 divided by -1 plus 1. -1 plus 1 is 0, so we have the absolute value of 0 over 0. Since the limit results in a 0 within an absolute value, it is required to work out each side of the limit separately. So we will look at the limit as x approaches -1 from the left side, indicated by the negative superscript on the -1, and limit as x approaches -1 from the right side, indicated by the positive superscript on the -1, of that same expression. Absolute value of x plus 1 over x plus 1 Let's start with the left-sided limit. We have x approaching -1 from the left side. The left side of -1 means more negative than -1, left side of -1 on a number line. More negative than -1, like say -1.01, plugged in for x here in the absolute value, -1.01 plus 1, or anything more negative than -1, will make that be a negative inside the absolute value. Now the absolute value ensures that what comes out of there is a positive number, and if what goes in is a negative, the absolute value will make it positive by taking the negative of it. So we can remove the absolute value brackets and replace it with parentheses by having a negative out in front of it to turn it into a positive. At this point we have the 0 over 0 indeterminate form, but we have the ability to cancel out the x plus 1 factors that are making 0 over 0, leaving us with -1 over 1, which is -1. Now we will look at the right-sided limit. X is approaching -1 from the right side. That means it's less negative than -1, or on the right side on the number line. Say like -0.99, less negative than -1. If we plug that in for x here in the absolute value, -0.99, or something less negative than -1, add it to 1, it will be a positive number. Now the absolute value for a positive number does not change the number at all, so it'll keep it the same by having a positive outside the parentheses if we remove the absolute value brackets. We still have the 0 over 0 indeterminate form here as well, but the x plus 1 factors can now cancel, and we result in +1 over 1, which overall gives us +1. Now for the two-sided limit, we can compare the results of the one-sided limits to each other. Since they do not match each other, the two-sided limit up here does not exist, and there's the results for those three different limits.